How accurate are my guns? What will my shells hit after being fired? These are questions that concern every World of Warships captain. In this episode, we're going to explain how the mechanics of firing and dispersion work.
In the first half of the 20th century, it was difficult to hit the same spot twice from a moving ship, even with a single gun, let alone 12 guns. In order to model this situation in World of Warships and enable our captains to hit some enemies at the same time, we introduced the dispersion ellipse.
Its center is at the aiming point. The dispersion ellipse is formed after each shot, perpendicular to the ideal trajectory of a shell's flight. An ellipse is formed for each turret. Your shells will fly through the formed ellipse.
If you fire at a moving ship, you need to take a lead on it. Thus, you aim at a point on the water's surface. At the moment the shell is fired, the ellipse is formed, with its center located at the intersecting point between your reticle and the water's surface.
However, it's complicated to aim in such a way because moving a reticle even by half a degree vertically over long distances results in the aiming point being shifted by a significant distance. That's why the automatic target lock-on feature was introduced into World of Warships. When a target is locked, a corresponding indicator will be visible above it.
If your reticle is locked onto an enemy, a vertical plane is formed through the center of the enemy ship in accordance with the vector of the ship's movement. So the dispersion ellipse will be formed then at the intersecting point between your reticle and the plane. Thus, the vertical sensitivity of your reticle is reduced, allowing you to focus on taking the right lead.
However, the feature does have its cons. For example, if you're locked onto an enemy that's closer to you and moving to the right, but you then decide to fire at a more distant enemy moving to the left, then, in the majority of cases, your shells will fall short of your intended target. To shift the lock to the required target, aim the reticle at it and press X.
One can also reset the automatic lock by pressing X, but we don't recommend doing so because firing at enemies without being locked onto them makes the dispersion ellipse 2 times larger.
The dispersion ellipse of each ship in the game has its own dimensions and shape. The artillery tab in the port includes the maximum dispersion parameter. This represents the horizontal length of the dispersion ellipse at the maximum firing range of the main battery.
For example, German Bismarck has a maximum dispersion of 272 meters when firing at a distance of 21.2 kilometers. Naturally, the lesser the firing range, the smaller the ellipse. When the German battleship fires from a distance of 4 kilometers away, the dispersion of her shells will be 100 meters.
No shell fired from the guns of your turret can travel outside the dispersion ellipse, while the probability of shells hitting the center of the ellipse is higher than that of them hitting the edge. The probability range for every in-game ship is set individually and depends on the ship's type, number of main guns per turret, number of turrets, and the gun caliber.
The spot inside the ellipse where a shell hits is calculated using Gaussian distribution, which is applied to the dispersion ellipse in a special manner. These calculations include the sigma parameter, which is calculated from the Gaussian distribution parameter of the same name. It relates directly to the accuracy. The greater the sigma value, the more frequently that shells will hit close to the center. However, one should know that the sigma value is just one of the accuracy parameters. Take a look at what happens if we change the dimensions of the dispersion ellipses.
The issue of increasing accuracy by decreasing the dispersion ellipse is certainly a topical one. The Aiming Systems Modification 1 upgrade, which reduces the maximum dispersion by 7%, is available to the majority of in-game ships. At the same time, the Artillery Plotting Room upgrade that decreases dispersion by 11% can be installed in the 6th slot of US battleships.
To make your enemies miss more frequently when firing at your ship, install a camo that increases the maximum dispersion of enemy shells by 4%, and the Concealment System upgrade, which adds a further 5%.
Summing up, the firing mechanics in World of Warships work like this. A dispersion ellipse is formed at the moment a shell is fired. Within the ellipse, some points are randomly determined. The shells will fly through these points and then continue their flight along the calculated ballistic curves. After the shells are fired, their trajectory remains the same until they hit something.
There's another topical issue regarding firing in World of Warships: how to send shells over islands. The target lock, as we've explained already, surely helps. But there is another important factor in this equation: ballistics. We'll discuss this topic in the next How It Works video. Click the bell so as not to miss it.